It's all the people. Hello, all the people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, everybody. Hey, welcome to VO Dojo's Ask the Sensei. This is our free question and answer, monthly question and answer call that we do the first Wednesday of every month. I'm Tish Hicks. I'm the Master Sensei of the VO Dojo. Back in Burbank, have been in Maui for a long time, but back here. Each month we are joined by the home studio master himself, Dan Lenard, here to answer all your tech questions. And each month we invite one of our esteemed colleagues from various realms of the kingdom of voiceover. And today, the first day of Audiobook Month, June is Audiobook Month, we are excited to have one of our favorite friends of the dojo, Ronnie Butler, here. He is an amazing narrator. He'll tell you all about himself. Ronnie, a couple times a year teaches You Should Do audiobooks for us, which is coming up in June. So Jeffrey's here, part of the dojo team to here facilitating. So the way this works is I just introduced myself and what this is. Well, Dan introduced himself. We'll talk to Ronnie for a second. And then this is a Q&A. So your cues are the things that allow us to give great A's. So if you want to put any questions that you have in the chat, that would be great. And let us know where you're calling from and what level of voiceover you are working at. Yes, I think that is it. So Dan, introduce yourself, my friend. Oh, but unmute.
How to unmute.
Step one.
Prowess there. I'm Dan Lenard, the home voiceover studio master. If you have a question about home voiceover studios and all the silly mythology that surrounds it, I will be happy to answer your questions in detail and with complete honesty.
Excellent. No, I'm thinking about like Sisyphus rolling his. Okay. And Ronnie, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you are up to?
My name is Ronnie Butler, and I'm an actor and audiobook narrator. I am now living in Palm Springs, California. I moved here about a year ago and have a home studio. I have been narrating full-time for about 5 years and narrating in general for about 7 years. I also teach. I've taught acting when I lived in New York with the Atlantic Theater Company, where I'm a member, and all through my years, and now coach audiobook narration as well and hold different workshops, some of which are, many of which are with the dojo. And I narrate all genres and can speak to a lot of different things. So please pony up some questions.
Yeah. And you are award-winning narrator? I know you
yeah, I've got about 18 earphone awards, which is sort of our one of our big deals. And our sort of laudatory, our biggest thing, our sort of our version of the Oscars is called the Audies. And I haven't won an Audie yet, but I've been nominated for 8 or 12. Yeah.
So soon it's coming up. Yeah. This is around.
I hope I don't turn into Susan Lucci.
Right. The Susan Lucci of audiobooks. No, it's fantastic. Excellent. Well, great to see some familiar faces and then a lot of new faces. So really great. Christine Dunford, as I live and breathe. This is awesome. Cool. Well, let's jump in. We will do our best to answer as many questions as you have. We'll mix them in, tech stuff, audiobook stuff, and if you don't have questions about audiobooks, we're here to answer questions about anything voiceover, really. So whatever's on your mind, whatever, is there something you're stuck on, something that you've been wondering about? We're open to all of the questions. So let's Do we have a one to start with?
We sure do. So when I call you, unmute yourself and I'll pin you and ask your question. In the chat, if you are shy, let me know and I'll pose your question for you. First one we have is Jeff Stizer. Jeff Stizer has a question.
Yeah, so just unmute yourself. There you go. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah. Hi, Ronnie. Hi, it's Jeff Stizer. I took your class a couple of years ago before the pandemic. It was sensational.
Hi again.
Again, my question for you has to do with when you are on the road, if you are on vacation or something, and need to be working, do you have any kind of a setup you take with you for work, or do you just let your folks know that you're out of town for a week or two? How do you take care of that?
Previously, I've just let people know that I was gone for a week or two. Because a week or two is not that long, actually, and I believe rest should be taken if you can. I have had occasion to find a local studio, which I've done too. If I'm somewhere, like if I've gone home to the Bahamas and I'm there for a month and I get an article or something someone wants me to record and they really can't find anybody else and they're willing to pay extra because I'm on vacation, I'll go and record in a local studio. But to answer your question more even further, I saw your question in the chat and I was scrounging around and I couldn't find it. But I am preparing hopefully to do a significant travel next year. And I do want to take a portable setup with me. And I have one that comes highly recommended from a very well-known narrator. And I will hunt for it when I'm not answering a question and see if I can find it and circle back. And if I can't, Jeff, please reach out to me on any of the social media and I'll have a very specific answer for that because it's something that I am shopping for and it's been recommended to me. I may be able to find it before the end of today though.
Yeah. And let me
thank you.
Oh, yeah, Dan.
No, Dan.
All right. When it comes to road units, Ronnie Butler is an accomplished, successful voice actor who has lots of contracts and works a lot of books. If you're just starting out, having a road unit means very little because you can't record at home and then record continuation of a book on the road. It just won't sound right. There's no way you can duplicate that, and that's a real problem. I find that a lot of people are like, I have to have a road unit. Ronnie needs a road unit because he is working constantly. You don't need a road unit, I mean, something simple for doing auditions and stuff like that. But don't go hog wild thinking I have to have a road unit because I'm going to be a voice actor on the road and I'm going to be doing it at my home studio. You have to establish yourself first before you start thinking about that. That said, there are some simple units you can get, like our friends at Epigee have the Epigee Hype and stuff like that you can take on the road with you. They're very portable, but strictly for auditions. You cannot continue an existing project on the road after you've started it in your home studio.
Perhaps I should have been a little bit more specific, Dan.
Hey.
What's happening is, I'm so sorry. I am going to be driving from Seattle, where I'm based, to New York in August, where I may be settling down for a couple of months.
Right.
And I thought, so I'll be away from my home studio, and am looking to sort of see what could I do besides, depending on where I'm staying, I might be able to find a very full closet. But over and above that, I'm just wondering if there are other reasonably easy things to transport.
Well, there's a couple of portable units you can try. There's the Harlan Hogan Portabooth Pro, which is pretty good, but you have to know how to use it. There's some very specific techniques. Vocal Booth To Go has a unit that's pretty good. A lot of people swear by these things. A lot of people swear at them. It's if you can, where you're staying, if there's a good walk-in closet, that's probably still your best bet. But strictly for auditions and for starting and completing projects in the same environment.
Right. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, in particular for audiobooks, right? It seems like when I started doing audiobooks, it was so pristine, and you must keep your head in the same alignment with the microphone. And I would imagine that it's a little bit more like, hey man, can people hear it? I don't know. What is your opinion on that, Ronnie, in terms of sound quality?
I think the pandemic forced producers to be a little bit more flexible and rely a lot more on post than they did before.
That's interesting.
They still have, you know, they still have a quality threshold, but they're a lot more forgiving than they used to be. Now, having said that, that was 2 years ago, right? What's happened is over the course of the pandemic, home studios and narrators have gotten more sophisticated in an effort to try to meet and compete. And as a result, now the bar is sort of going back up. In terms of mic placement and stuff like that, I'd say that the biggest concern is, or the biggest desire is for the authenticity of performance, right? And so if you move away from the mic because you're doing something, you know, because of something in the performance that is bigger, or that is, you know, you're yelling, or someone's calling from behind, or, you know, you're living in the moment, that stuff is entirely acceptable and in fact invited. You know, it's only considered sloppy if you're, you know, if you're supposed to be in this moment and you have no control over your body.
Whoa. And
people can feel the difference between the two. Listeners can tell the difference between the two.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. All right. What are the questions, guys?
Great. Thanks, Jeff. The next question that we have is from Christine Dunford.
Christine, hello. It's been so long. Oh, we can't hear you though. First roll. Can you unmute yourself? Still muted. Can you unmute her, Jeffrey?
I can try. I think I can just ask to unmute.
Please. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Houston, we have liftoff. There we go.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really, it's wonderful. So speaking of performance, and if this goes too deep into the weeds, acting wise, just let me know. So bringing acting experience into the work for audiobook and narrating, I'm finding that there are certain adjustments I can make having to do with, you know, more continuity of pace and also speaking more intimately. But where I tend to really run into trouble, and I'm listening to tons of audiobooks, I haven't done any yet, but I'm listening to tons, is in first person narrative, because I have this instinct to kind of go deep inside anything that is inner monologue, and I get way too dynamic. And I just wanted to know sort of how you navigate, how you thread the needle between remaining in a pace that is good for the listener while also really having your acting instincts alive in the work.
When you said that you become too dynamic, do you mean too loud or in too much variation, or what?
I think both. Or I'll even get too quiet. You know what I mean? It's a real vocal dynamic, and then, yeah.
Okay.
Vocally dynamic.
So, that's a great question, first of all. I would say that in terms of your vocal dynamic, in just terms of loudness, right? I think you need to figure out what the parameters are, how big you can go in terms of volume that's safe in the mic, and how low you can go, right? And set those. And I think any movement you do anywhere in that range is totally acceptable. You can go all over the place. I also believe, and now I'm speaking for myself and the narrators that I love and listen to. I don't think you have to worry about keeping like a standard or a set pace or an even pace. I think your pacing should match your moment in the scene work, in your acting. Okay. The only caveat to that is generally we talk faster when we speak. Generally, you have to speak slower in general, which is the enemy of art. In general, we have to speak more slowly in narration. Even our fast has to be slightly slower than our fast in real life, if that makes sense, because people aren't getting the information cues from your face and your mouth. They're just hearing you.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
You just, yes, you clarified something so that has been like a thorn in my side for so long. That is so well stated. Thank you.
So, and then the other part of that too, just as in terms of pace, is oftentimes when you're doing something that's action oriented, the tendency as the actor is, because you're feeling so much, that you want to speed up as well. And you actually, I think it behooves you to push against that and actually remain in the pace that you are, as opposed to pacing up when action is happening. Because oftentimes there's so much action and you're describing it, the listener, once again, without the visual cues, will get lost. So you have to resist that. But otherwise, I think you can be true to your instincts and go all over the place. You know, in romance, I go anywhere from how I'm talking to you now to very, very, very internal, incredibly tiny. And if you listen to people like Andy Arndt and how small she gets, I mean, that was my lesson. You know, it changed the way I did romance. It's allowed. It's all in. If you're in it, it's all in.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Right. And I love Ronnie, the quality of your answer. Fabulous question. And then love the quality of your answer, because you just said not just do this, but you said why. And then that allows all of us to click in and go like, oh, right, that's why. Here's what is a way to approach it and why.
Especially that information about, the audience not being there to absorb all of the visual cues and all the energy cues that they would get from your body. That is just, that's everything.
So, and those things come through, except you have to give it a second, right? Like you have to give it time. So it's brilliant. Yeah. One of the things, at the dojo and everything that we do is like, know how to ask good questions, and you'll always be able to get the answers and then answer them yourself. So this is good. Fantastic. Great. And the audiobook will be a much better place for having you in it, Christine. Cool. What questions are next, Jeffrey?
Well, we've got our good friend Terry Briscoe in the chat.
Terry, he's become an Ask the Sensei regular. Hey, Terry.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Jeffrey. And nice to meet you, Ronnie. I was wondering, what is the largest number of characters that you have done in one book production?
I haven't counted, but I would say, easily 40 or 50.
In one book?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm thinking particularly of a series called A Free Man of Color, and it's set in the characters are set in New Orleans, and so there's a protagonist and his family, mother, sisters, the people that they are in relationships with, and then there are a host that they're just it's sort of a detective story, and there's just a host of people in every one. There was one book where an Italian opera company came in town, and of course that was 20 people. So yeah,
that's dope. So how do you handle
when
many different voices that you're doing for characters?
When I'm prepping the book, when I'm reading the book for the first time, a lot of times voices will suggest themselves in my head, and I may read out loud when I get to certain people, and I take on the I try to read all the cues that the author has provided, like she said squeakily, or he had a very airy quality to his voice. Things like that are the cues that I get, and I experiment, or not experiment, but I combine various facets of, pace, placement, resonance, and pitch in various combinations in order to arrive at, specific voices for the various characters. Now, in a book like that, where if you've got that many characters in a book, oftentimes there are people that come from different places and also have different accents or different regionalisms, which is a savior, right? Oh my gosh, I can make this person Southern. Great,
Absolutely.
right? And it makes it easier to differentiate themselves. But that's the work. Yeah, those books are much more challenging. And don't pay any more than the ones that are not.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great answer. Appreciate
I
that.
remember doing a thriller, a woman protagonist thriller, and in the middle of the book, there was like a conference room where all the men of the police station were in the conference room. So I had to they were all in the same room, in the same scene, had to differentiate 13 different male voices and be the chick detective too. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. On a technical standpoint, Dan, I don't know if this would be in the realm of the technical, but do you have any thoughts on how to keep track of characters, either with what you'd want them all to be in the same levels, right? But then
Well, it depends on the character. Yeah. I mean, some characters talk louder than others. And you've got to be able to be aware of it. And I'm sure Ronnie will tell you, you read the book first, you give it a good look as to, when characters are and when to adjust, and learn to adjust levels as you're talking, or use different mic techniques. So in case somebody talks louder, it doesn't overmodulate. So, and besides, we don't yell in people's ears. So,
and I forgot, and also, was it Terry who asked the question? Yeah. Also, too, as you're recording, the first time that character speaks, right then and there, I select that in whatever DAW you're working in. I go ahead and I select that, and I make an excerpt, whether it's an MP3 or WAV or whatever, and name it after that character, and build a file folder of all the characters, because sometimes a character will not pop up again until 10 chapters later. It's like, oh, how did that character talk? Or, a character will pop up and I'll think, am I voicing him too close to the person I already did? And so you've got a folder where you have all that information, however you want to store it, but you have references that you can go to listen to who you've already done. As you're going along. And also too, if you do another book in that same series 2 years later, you can come back and listen to how you voiced people.
It's like a bird call chart, right? It's like, here's the call of awesome. Good.
Thank you.
What are the questions, Jeffrey?
Thanks, Terry. The next question we have is from Therese. Therese,
our very own Therese.
Hey guys. Ronnie, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I've noticed a lot more either listing full cast or a different actor for different lead characters. Not sure if that's more of a trend or a shift, but I'm wondering if you've been part of any recordings like that, and if so, how is it pieced together?
Yeah, most of the time, that's a great question. Thank you. I think it's certainly more popular than it was. It's becoming increasingly popular. It's a lot more expensive to do because you're paying a lot more people. So if you've got a character that only has one chapter, you end up paying them, a minimum of at least one finished hour. Whereas, so it can become much more expensive to produce that way. So oftentimes producers do it for sort of the big books. Do you know what I mean? The stuff that they're going to really, really push, famous authors, things that I think are going to do really well. But it is increasingly popular to do that. I would say what's most popular is in romance, where a book is split between a book is written between the two protagonists, male and female, oftentimes, or if it's LGBTQIA, it's MM or FF, but it's still back and forth between POVs, right, between points of view. And in that case, they'll hire one actor for one point of view and one actor for the other. You'll do all your chapters in isolation.
Okay.
To answer that part of your question, you do it in isolation. If you're in a multicast, you do your chapters in isolation. You'll get communication between the other actors. You may say, I'll reach out to the person that's doing the other half of the romance, if it's romance, for example, and say, how are you planning to voice me? Or how are you planning to voice your character? So, and you confer with that. So you're sort of on the same page and have the same understanding of the tone. And you go from there. But all of that's done in isolation. You're recording on your own. The other way that it happens, and it's generally only Audible that does this, and Audible tends to do it like a live radio show, and in which case you'll be on Zoom, or if you're in Newark, you go into their studio there, but you'll be on Zoom with 3 or 4 or 8 other people all at the same time, and you're actually acting with people, right? And everybody's muting when they're not talking, so as to hopefully not bleed through your headphones, but you've got but you're acting in the moment, and that's a lot of fun. It doesn't happen a lot because it's a much harder to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
And two things that I'll observe about, first of all, like on the romance side, if that becomes one of your specialities, like Kelly Tager and Gregory Salinas are 2 Dojo members who've just been rocking it, but they kind of are like I don't know, I wouldn't say Fred and Ginger, but maybe, but they kind of have become known as romance novel partners. So they will do a lot of books. The other cool thing about doing things that are, you only do half the book, if audiobooks take a lot of time. So if you're the only one doing it, it takes a lot of time. I find with my busy schedule that doing books that have, like, I'm just doing part of the chapters, it's obviously not as much money if you're doing the whole thing, but it allows you to keep your foot in the game, your foot in the door, your toe in the, whatever the metaphor is, be a part of it without having it take up all of your time. So that's kind of a cool way to get in on titles with
That's
not
great. Thank you. I haven't thought of that.
all the things. But that's not for you to say, like, I only do half books. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not for you to say, but it can work out. Yeah. Awesome. Oh, I'd be interested. I don't know. Not sure that everyone has their pictures on, but who here has done at least one book? Who has done a book so far? Little mixture, and it's like, yeah. Okay, I can't see everybody, so it's kind of a bad visual poll. Who's done 10 books? Awesome. So we've got some varying areas. Okay, good. The most important thing is doing your first book, because you know what you find out about doing your first book? If you like doing books. And if you don't like it, you don't have to do it, because others enjoy it and want to do it. And if it's like you'd rather get a spike through your head than sit in a box for a long time. And then also, like, you may your first marathon may be like, oh my God, I did that. But you either want to run another one or you say, thank you, I've checked that off my bucket list. So just it's always the first step to do that first book and see if you like the lifestyle. My friend Amy Rubenit she started out as a narrator and has moved on to being a very well-respected and wonderful publisher and producer. It's how we know Ronnie, actually. But I remember in the height of her narration days, she would call after months of being away and say, hello, I needed to talk to somebody because I realized that I live the exact same lifestyle as someone in solitary confinement. So I can speak to you for this much time and then I have to go back in my box. So good to know. Good to know what you're doing.
Commitment.
Literally. But there's good things too, because then people hundreds of years from now will hear your storytelling and their lives will be changed. Jeffrey, what other questions do we have?
All right. Next is from Isabella Tugman. Hello, Isabella. Hello, Izzy.
Hello. So I'm actually narrating full time right now, but all of my work has been indie through ACX, through networking, and through some streaming apps and stuff like that. So my next goal is to connect more with publishers. So I wanted to know the prerequisites before I do that and how the best way of developing those relationships is.
Great questions. You're muted, Ronnie.
Yes, those are great questions. Yeah, and it's a very common question, or it's a very popular goal. It's more challenging in this time of the pandemic when we don't have face-to-face interactions, although that is starting to change. So I would say that full disclosure, I am an appointed board member, not a voted on board member, but I'm an appointed board member of the Audiobook Publishers Association. And I'm at the APA. And the APA sponsors events all year. They have something called, they have socials now in the major cities. I don't know where you are, but I know in LA and New York and Chicago, they have just social events where there's always at least one publisher in attendance. So it allows you to have FaceTime, but they have a project they call speed dating. And now because they've figured out how to do it on Zoom, they do it several times a year. There's no prerequisites for that, except that you have to be a member of the APA. And you also have to have some samples that people can listen to. It's by lottery. You throw your hat in the ring every single time. I know people who it took 2 or 3 years, and I know other people who got it the first time they tried. But you get 5 minutes of narrating aloud with anywhere from 20 to 40 producers listening online. Absolutely, it's an incredible opportunity. I highly recommend it.
Like a yearling sale.
Yeah. There's also if you go to the APA website, it's audiopub.org is what it is. There is a new narrator workshop that you do not have to be a member of APA to participate in. You can sign up for, and these happen, I think, 3 times a year. And they have anywhere from about 20 to 30 producers that come on, and they select 20 people, 20 narrators, maybe 40 to participate. And then afterwards you have breakout rooms where you and 4 other narrators maybe meet with 1 producer. So once again, you get some one-on-one time. This is all about, I should preface this by saying, the goal, right, is to develop relationships. Right? Because the relationship, as opposed to, hi, my name is so-and-so, give me a job. It's hi, let's get to know each other, because that relationship is what's going to turn into a job. Now, this is me talking from a business point of view. I find this to be the most effective. Going to APAC next year, I'm almost certain it will be live. That was what did it for me. You go to the Audiobook Publishers Convention and people will grab you and drag you over to meet somebody from Penguin Random House. They literally will, right? That's how that happens. They're all relationships. I would also say, anybody in the group, if you identify as LGBTQIA or in any kind of diversity where it's neuro differences, neurological differences, any kind of way in which you identify as somebody who is diverse, there is a narrator mentorship program that's specifically under the auspices of diversity, where you have 3 months where you meet weekly with a veteran narrator, and you can pull in and meet producers as well. Penguin Random House is on Clubhouse, and they offer, and other publishers do the same thing. You just have to research that a little bit more. Look at the audiobook groups on Clubhouse. But Penguin Random House has like a weekly or every 2 weeks where they basically have auditions. I mean, they pick you, you just raise your hand, they give you the mic and you read, and they give you feedback. And there's at least 1 to 3 producers online listening. It's another way to do it. Trying to think anything else. Coaching with veterans who have relationships with those people already, you know, who can refer you. I get probably once every other week, at least once a month, I get a request for a narrator for a specific project or a specific background or a specific type. And I refer people that I coach or that I've come across that don't have those relationships yet, and try to help people foster those relationships.
Yeah.
I talked for a long time. I'm not sure I answered the question.
Yeah. And distillation, relationship. Relationship. Well, and then also, Isabella, it sounds like you also have put in, you've put in your miles too. Like, I think that's also a difference to be able
and I
to,
wonder at what point you think somebody's ready to take that leap. You know, is it a number of titles? I know I submitted to, I think it was Flamingo Audiobook Productions, and they wanted 15 produced audiobooks on ACX, and I was like, well, technically I've produced more than 15, but some of them are on streaming platforms and it's not all on ACX, and I don't know. So I was curious what those landmarks might be.
For the big 5 publishers and for people like Tantor and Blackstone, I would say that doesn't, there's not a threshold number. You know, it's more, it's just like how somebody can get picked up and get a TV show without having any, without having any credits, because they're just right for the book. They're just right for the part. Having skills and having, a website and samples and places where they can go to listen to you, having all that sort of collateral ready so that they can look at you if they're interested, definitely. But if you have the experience, if you have some experience and you have the passion to work with those people, I think that's the sign. My first book was with Blackstone. My second book was with Tantor. There's no barrier there except the ones that sort of people make up.
And I think since ACX has come on the radar, which is now a while, but I remember when it first did, I was like, wait a minute. In addition to reading, in addition to narrating, you want me to do what, hey, and who now? Like what? So it's become sort of the norm that you as the narrator need to do all that stuff. The awesome thing about working with publishers is that you don't have to do all that stuff. So that's, and I think, it's valid both ways. Need to know your worth and your value and set your prices so you're not working for peanuts. But but just, I don't know. It's all, just be good and meet the people who and love it. I think that's also.
Lastly, if you feel unsure, you can send your samples to somebody who's a veteran narrator and say, hey, do you think I'm ready to submit these to the Penguin Random House? You can go. I know people who have gotten. Speaking of Kelly, Kelly has gotten jobs by having her samples on Ahab Talent, which is Penguin Random House's thing. She's gotten requests for auditions. She's auditioned and she's gotten work from that. I
was going to ask, because that's a relatively recent. That's a roster that was Penguin Random House and now is shared by all the big. Can you say who the big 5 are? You said the big 5. I might not know who those
so
are.
These would be the big 5. Are what I mean by that is that these are the established print publishers who also produce audio, right? And they are Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Macmillan, and who's the 5th one?
Would you say Tantor's? No, Tantor's not.
Digital producer.
Audiobooks, yeah.
Blackstone is a digital producer that is in the last 2 years started actually producing print. So they went in the reverse direction and now they do both.
Yeah. Hachette, maybe?
Hachette, that's it. And the one is Hachette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, good, good. Excellent. Well, hopefully that was helpful, Isabel. But if you know you're ready, go for it. Because the only thing you can do is less work for more money. So nothing wrong with that, right? On probably cooler projects too. Not always, but sometimes, yeah. Excellent. What are the questions? Any tech questions? Any other questions?
I wanted to hop over to iPad.
Dear
Can
old
get-
iPad.
Yes. If whoever the user known as iPad parentheses 2 close parentheses would like to come into the room.
Yeah, my mic's not great. I'm on an iPad, obviously. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Who are we speaking
Okay.
with?
Oh, JJ's my name.
Hey, JJ.
How you doing? I had a question about the different DAWs and what you guys find most useful. There are a whole bunch of seminars through Screen Actors Guild Foundation, for example, on Audacity, but the ones they use when they were open in Los Angeles and New York that they preferred for audiobooks and actually recording in general were Twisted Wave. And I'm wondering if you know of the different DAWs, Reaper, Twisted Wave, et cetera, et cetera. If there are any discounts available. I tried to find coupons, for example, for Twisted Wave, and I couldn't find any. And it lists at $99. And they even have an internet version. You go into a browser and you can use that. But I'm wondering if, for example, if you're recording on an old system, like OS 10.8.5, which is pretty old and which works for me. If you get into one of these DAWs and you upgrade and get a different computer, do you still have that license you've bought forever and ever? And so forth. I'm all over the place with my blunderbuss question, but it's about the DAWs basically.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can narrow that down to you pretty easily. First off, software all sounds the same. It all takes ones and zeros and turns it back into what it is you recorded. The difference in the different software is its workflow. How do you work? What's the most efficient way to use it? And what, if any, effects that you can use, especially the master stuff. And all of the ones that you just mentioned, all are capable of doing that. Reaper, of course, is free. Audacity is free. So if you want a discount coupon for that, go for it. You buy that, they'll definitely guarantee you don't like it, you can get your money back. Twisted Wave is great if you're on a Mac. Twisted Wave is one of those softwares that it really is designed to do what we do, which is narrate. It's simple. It's one track. It's super easy to edit. Everybody has their technique with different types of software. Audacity, people have you just keep recording different levels. I'm like, good luck keeping track of all that stuff. Personally, and this is just my style, I just record an entire chapter. I don't stop, and I make marks, and I go back and I correct if I make a mistake. Is that efficient? For me, it is, because I've been editing for a long time. But something like Adobe Audition is great. That's what I use primarily for my voiceover work. I haven't done audiobooks in a long time, but when I did, I usually use Twisted Wave and edited it in that. Discount coupons, they're generally not giving those out, for software. Twisted Wave, however, does give you 30 days free to try it out, which I find really nice. And I know the author of that, Thomas Terrier, is constantly taking user suggestions and updating it. And now there's a lot of new features with it. And it's $99 once. And as long as you have that install file, you can continue to move it on to whatever new computer you have.
Okay. They have a new beta version I just saw, by the way, in case anybody is using a PC made for Windows. So I don't know how it is, but it's they're branching out to try to be compatible with non Apple products.
Yeah, check it out. See how it works.
Yeah. And, I think the other thing, sometimes, obviously, when you're starting any new endeavor, any new business, hey, mom, I want to go play baseball. Okay, let's get you all the stuff. Here's your mitt, and here's your bag, and here's your bat, right? There's an investment that you need to do anything. So if you think about, I mean, I know $100 can be like, ugh, at some point, but if you're thinking for the long run, like you get paid one job and it's paid for itself, so I think sometimes we're like, oh, how can I do this on as little as possible? And sometimes that we have to go with what we have, right? We work with what we have, and we as the wise Dan Lenard often says. But what's your saying about we don't
About-
work with equipment and
Oh,
working?
you don't buy great equipment to get work. You work to get great equipment.
Exactly. So you keep on reinvesting, but there's a little bit of a mind shift of $100, geesh, to wow, it's $100. And when I'm narrating my 25th audiobook or winning my 16th audio award, right? Then it's going to be like, oh, that's like so minuscule amount of.
Sure. No, I just meant versus the free stuff like Audacity, which I hear people can manipulate to do so many things. Is it worth at least that, as I said, for whatever reason, the Screen Actors people on the both coasts in their labs seem to push Twisted Wave as the DAW that's preferred. So that's why I was thinking about it. Can I ask one more technical question?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
I have a perfectly fine what's it called? MBox 2 Mini from the old days from DigiDesign, and the bastards, as Steve Jobs and Tim Cook and the rest of the guys do, they don't like to make things backwards compatible.
No, they
So
don't.
I found I couldn't plug the MBox Mini into anything but my 2008 still working iMac, Intel iMac, and have it work. And I'm wondering, are there any things you can do to make that interface work with the newer systems? Because it's not broken; it's perfectly fine.
It's an interesting question because there's a lot of legacy and outmoded equipment out there. My co-host on Voiceover Body Shop, George Whittam, did a segment on our show the other day, the museum of outmoded stuff. Mostly ISDN boxes and stuff like that. But it's like, he's got a pile of interfaces. I have a pile of interfaces here too. They're not expensive. If it's simply a matter of I can't afford to do this, you've got to be able to make the investment in what's going to work with the equipment that you have now. But you don't have to go hog wild on that. You can get a Focusrite Solo for $120. You can also get something used, but almost any interface is compatible today. But the old M boxes made by DigiDesign, those were built specifically to work with Pro Tools, and therefore their backwards compatibility is not really good.
Yeah, I just figured some techie would know how to fix it up. But the joke is that everybody kind of laughed at me when I mentioned the MBox in a Zoom on audiobooks last week. And the upshot was Monday, I got a Focusrite for the $120, and it works with everything.
Solved.
And then you can still crank up the old Victrola when you need to and want to.
No, I want to get rid of it or split, but who's going to buy it?
Wire recorder, yeah.
Exactly. Yay. Well, that's a great questions,
Thanks,
JJ.
guys.
Thank you. We're coming to the home stretch here. What other questions do we have, Jeffrey?
So Charles Ardman had a question. Charles, yep, go ahead for it.
Hi, Ronnie. Hi, all. My question is, I'm just beginning to explore if it makes sense for me to attempt this genre. And
so many qualifiers.
well, I understand.
Always tried.
And for purposes of setting an aspirational goal, Ronnie, I was wondering, what's your ratio of total time that you spend to create 1 hour of finished narration?
If you're including prep time or
Yeah, all in.
You know, that's a hard question to answer. I'd have to give you a range because the prep time varies. The prep time varies based on the genre and on the actual book. And then the time in the booth also varies based on the genre and the book. So, for example, right now I do a romance for just one author mostly. The romance that I do, and I've done maybe 30 of her books at this point. I know her style completely. I know the tropes completely. You know, they're very easy for me now in terms of a range of difficulty easy. So the prep for that book is I can skim read that book in a couple of hours. And I mean a couple, like 2.5 hours, right? Making sure I'm looking for character names, things that are any vocal traits that the author mentions, any surprises, the ending, so I know what the arcs are, boom, boom, boom. But I have a whole, 10,000 hours of experience doing her books to do that. And then in the booth, I can do, a ratio of an hour and a half sometimes to 1 hour of finished audio, sometime, 2 to 1. But that's because I know her work so well. Nonfiction is going to be twice that easily. It's going to be probably an hour of reading and research for every hour in the booth and 2 hours of recording for 1 hour. So we're talking 3 hours outside the booth entirely for 1 hour in the booth. So it ranges, if that makes sense. So to recap, I would say anywhere from 2 to 1 to 4 to 1 if you're including all your research, right? As well as your recording time in the booth. The only caveat to that is if you're super busy, you may subcontract out your prep, right? So I have at times hired somebody to write footnotes of an entire book, and then with a list of all the characters, all the character traits, and all that stuff. And that minimizes significantly the amount of time that it takes me to prepare the book and to be able to walk in ready to record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really, really important, because the first thing you need, the first thing you figure out about audiobooks is that it is per finished hour, which means that however many hours the publisher has said this is this many hours that will be the final product. However long it takes you, you still get paid that much. So the smaller your ratios, the more you're actually getting paid. And then that's why you also have to be take very much into consideration of what all you're being asked to do in that finished hour. Because if you just need to prep and read, that's one thing that already is 2 to 1 or 4 to 1, right? So, $250 an hour, that's a lot, except to cut into 4, cut into 6, cut into 8, and then, how does that work? And then sometimes there's other things that are being asked of you to edit and proof and all that stuff too. So.
And the truth is, the more experienced you get, the faster you get at all the stuff that we've just talked about, right? It's economies of scale that comes with your experience.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I thought there's one other question, Jeffrey. Do you have time for one more? Yeah, I think so. Unlike Mr. Incredible. Yeah, we got time.
Yeah, we have time for one more before the top of the hour. Let's see. William LaValle.
LaValle.
Hello.
Hi, thank you. I'm really finding this interesting. I was just wondering, what are some of the most in-demand genres in audiobooks now? I suppose they probably follow the paper copies of the books, but maybe that's not the case.
The most popular genre is thriller. And then, thriller is by far the most popular, which surprised me. I did not know that. I found that out just a couple of months ago. It is by far the most popular. The fastest growth is in romance. I believe there was in terms of blossoming genre, romance has been like third or fourth, but is now pushing up into second place as that coming up being the next most popular genre. Those two
People have
are
not been able to see each other for 3 years, have not had any human contact.
And
Yeah.
are there a lot of male narrators in romance, or is
Oh
it
yeah,
mostly- really?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
50%.
in fact, I mean, the stars, the quote unquote stars of romance are the men. The star narrators in romance are the men. There's a handful of them: Sebastian York, Steve West, Eddie Hamilton. These are people that their name alone on a romance book sells a book. Very,
They're
very
like the heartthrobs of
Yeah.
romance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Is that helpful, Bill?
Yes, indeed. That's very helpful. I appreciate that.
Cool. Well, we're almost to the top of the hour. What we usually do is wrap up here. So if you're like 10 to 11, I'm out. That's great. And then we do kind of like after hours. If Ronnie and Dan, you have a couple more minutes to spend, we can answer a couple more questions. Depending on how many people leave, we may go into a breakout room. But we'll wrap up here. Oh, look, little baby audiobook narrator. We'll wrap up here at the top of the hour. Ronnie, do you have a few more minutes? You don't have to.
I can do a few more minutes. Maybe
Okay, yeah,
10 more minutes.
10, 15 minutes. How about you, Dan?
I can take about 10 minutes.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Well, wrapping up. Thanks all for being here. We do we do Ask the Sensei the first Wednesday of every month, 10 a.m. PT. Let's see, what is coming up? We are starting You Should Do Voiceover Intensive if you're on the beginning of your journey or partway through your journey and want to deepen or deepen and complement and supplement what you're doing. Or I'm really intrigued about this, and June is audiobook month because audiobook is such a specific genre. I think a lot of people come in through audiobooks, but then you may have questions about how to get things started in the other realms as well. So You Should Do Voiceover would be good for that. If you're a working pro, can talk about Nth Degree, our working pro focus action forum. And then also we do fight clubs 3 times a month, which is our working pro workout that brings together top-notch talent with the decision makers who hire us. We've got 3 amazing people. Carly Silver from Sound and Fury is coming up. Andy Roth, fantastic New York casting director in a bunch of different genres. And then Renee Johnson, who's usually she comes regularly once a year, and she's with Disney character voices. So she's a very, very cool person to meet. So you can spectate, anyone can spectate. Players are demo repped and booking. So those are some things coming up for us. Jeffrey, you can put the thing in the in general, be more specific, the website and how to keep in touch with us. Dan, how do people keep in touch with you?
They can find me over at my website, homevoiceoverstudio.com. And you can contact me from there. And if you have a question or if you need some help or you want to submit a sample to my specimen collection cup, that's $25. I will give a thorough analysis of your audio.
Yeah. And then VOBS is how often?
It's on every week. Usually Sunday we do Tech Talk, and it's on Facebook all week. And then every other week we interview somebody from the business. And there are over 400 episodes for you to explore with lots of knowledge too.
Dating back to when the Mbox was the thing, right?
Back in 2011.
And then you are also president of WOVO, which is worthwhile mentioning. It's a great resource.
Yes, worldvoices.org. It's world-voices.org. It's the industry association of freelance voice talent. And yes, I am president, and we are doing some really cool stuff to help people move their careers ahead. And so check us out at world-voices.org.
Excellent. And Ronnie, You Should Do Audiobooks is coming up in June 17th and 18th.
So we, Tish and I in the dojo have worked together several times on these one day, although now we've split it. But it's an 8-hour intensive workshop that is soup to nuts about diving into the audiobook business, and it covers both performance technique as well as the nuts and bolts of what the industry is, who the players are, how to market yourself, stuff that should be included in a website. So it's business and art in about 8 hours. And it's split now. We're doing it June 17th and 18th. There'll be a few hours on Friday evening and then 5 hours on the next day on Saturday.
And you have launched you've kind of launched 1,000 ships in terms of.
Right, there's members of the dojo now who are doing pretty regular, working pretty regularly, almost full time, doing audiobooks.
Yeah. And Debbie's the head of the diversity committee that you're talking about, right? Debbie Tinsley.
Yeah,
Yes.
Debbie Tinsley is now who started with the dojo and who took the workshop is now is working for the Big Five and as well as other publishers, and she's on the diversity committee, the DEI mentorship program as well. So yeah, it's launched. You're right, it's launched a lot of ships. It's a great workshop. It's intense. That's why we split it up. There's a lot of information and a lot of opportunity to perform and get feedback.
Yeah, and Ronnie's a fantastic teacher. He's really good.
I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up there. Jeffrey should have put everything that you need in the chatty chat, so grab that. And if you need to roll, we'll see you next month, hopefully on Fight Clubs, and check. And if you have any questions about anything that we're doing here at the dojo, sign up for a voiceover, once-over, 15-minute consultation. Jeffrey will talk with you about where you're at and where you'd like to be and how we may be of help for that. Awesome. So bye if you want to go, and then let's do a couple more minutes of questions. We'll just let people kind of shift off. And
I answered because I thought we were ending, and I answered a couple of questions in the chat, but privately, but I will actually share what I said.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we could just kind of pop through those
Yeah.
answers.
So
yes, no, yes, no, never.
Grace had asked if you do one character in isolation all the way through and then the other one, and the answer to that is no, you do not. You just, if you're recording if you're responsible for all the book, like all the characters in a thriller, say like a Jason Bourne kind of book, and you're playing everybody, there's really no way to do that. You start at the chapter, you read all the way through, and you bounce back between the voices, which is why you really need to have them in your body and know what they're doing, or it's because it really slows you down. Now, once again, there are times when you just forget, wait a minute, who is this? Right. But yeah, no, you just read straight through and you just bounce back and forth and keep going. Yeah.
Great. There was one about gold-tipped cables in here from Terry. Yeah. Dan, what's the word on gold-tipped cables?
Doesn't make a difference.
Wah, wah.
There's an awful lot of marketing and stuff, like gold-tipped cables and mud flaps and all this stuff that the retailers are like, oh, you're voice acting, you need one of these, and a lot of it's nonsense if you set up properly. So gold tip cables, will they last longer? Maybe. They could be bad soldering joints in them and stuff. And I think it's more of a gimmick than anything else. I don't use gold tip cables, and nobody seems to complain about my stuff. So
excellent. What are the questions?
Let's see if I can find another couple of rapid fire ones. Let's see. Do the Big Five publishers also do just as many non-fiction projects? Seems like they do a lot of fiction. Do they also do a lot of non-fiction?
Yes, they do. They do a ton of nonfiction, actually. And hi, Deanna. They do a ton of nonfiction. It is, in my opinion, it's easier to break into nonfiction because not as many people want to do it, and not as many people are good at it. It's more challenging because oftentimes the nonfiction hasn't been written to be read out loud, and it's not written as story. So if you have the ability to take it and make it sound like story, that
Feel
is
like story too, right?
yeah.
Like,
That's
yeah.
And the thing is, it is story. It's just not. It doesn't appear that way on face, and people have this feeling of, oh, it's just facts. But the facts are telling a story, and that's what that's the job. Having said
How
that,
to make
nonfiction is,
toast.
I started the bulk of my career, my first 3 or 4 years of audiobooks was nonfiction. That 60 to 70% of what I did was nonfiction, from all the publishers and also the digital publishers as well. It's a very big genre.
So it behooves a well-rounded audiobook narrator to be able to do all the things.
And speaking of story, memoir, biography, those fall into, and self-help, those fall into the category of nonfiction, but specifically history, memoir, and biography are very, very much like fiction. So they often read like fiction because they're much more story oriented. So yes.
Cool.
Great, thanks. And that was from John Grace, by the way. I'm going to start just reading these off so we can chew through the remainder of them, hopefully, and get them all answered. So,
Lego guy, John Grace.
yeah. All right. So I feel like I can kind of lump a few questions into one. Ekatrini and Grace Newton had questions about the process, specifically footnotes, notations, and citations, if you think they lend to the content. Yeah, is there typically a way that you would cite references or additional reading or additional knowledge that needs to be obtained outside of the source that you're reading from, and how would you go about that?
I've in the 250 to 300 odd books that I've narrated, I've only ever read footnotes once. And those were specific. Those weren't all the footnotes. Those were just 2 or 3 specific notes in the book that the publisher decided helped do exactly what the questioner described, which was inform the context. But for the most part, you never read footnotes, you never read acknowledgments, you never read bibliographies. None of that stuff is ever included, whether it's even though it's nonfiction. Often very, very rarely, because I think the main reason is because it's very difficult for you to jump between those two and for the listener to be able to track it.
Right, visually you can see, I'm looking down here.
It does more to take the listener out than it does to inform context.
Yeah, cool.
Great. So that actually ended up being a more individual question from Grace. Ekatrini and I'm so sorry if I say this wrong. Galit, Benzequen, both kind of had a question about how do you, the process, where can you find a good tutorial for preparing to record, editing chapters, stuff like that? Like, is there like a go-to place if somebody said, I don't know, like a YouTube tutorial or like somebody that you know, or do you offer any kind of walkthroughs or tutorials? Is that kind of too big of a question to tackle quickly?
Well, I've taught it. I've done webinars on how to use this stuff. Once you start recording, it becomes a very highly personal way in which you do it. So you need to learn the basics of how any particular system works, and then practice and play with it until you see what it does, and then get an understanding of what it is that's required of you to do. If you have questions, I'm certainly available to answer those types of questions and settle those things down so you get it right.
Yeah, and it is good to know that a pretty standard practice in audiobooks is punch and roll. if you're working with a director or you're working as your own director, that you go, if you make a mistake, you stop, the audio rolls back a little bit, plays, and then you pick up, and then you get a pretty well rough first draft of, because you're punching and rolling, you're fixing things as you go along. What else do you have to add, Ronnie? I think you do this the most of all of us, so.
I think I sort of got lost in the question. I know that the part of it was editing chapters, but in terms of any primers on prepping a book or just narrating in general, is that the question?
So prepping, I guess maybe we should get Ekatrini in the room just to clarify and specify down a little bit more. So Ekatrini, if you could.
Still here?
Is Ekatrini still here? I don't think so. So we'll never know.
That workflow is what you talk about, and you should do audiobooks, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Here's what we do.
I could spend an hour talking to you about how to prep a book, and all the aspects of prepping a book. Everyone develops their own skill eventually, but prepping a book simply means reading the book in advance, so you have knowledge of the characters, the arc of the book, the arc of each character, the tone of the book as a whole, so that you know how to track the story and to carry the reader through the story, the listener through the story. And that's the purpose of prepping, because you don't want to find that in the booth, because then you're stopping in order to find that, and you're increasing even more the amount of time that you're spending in the booth. Right. It saves you time in the booth, basically.
It's kind of like prepping before you're cooking, right? Yeah. You have, if you do the sous chef stuff before, then you just have your little bowls of things, and then you just add it while you're cooking, right?
And every narrator, myself included, has this story where you're on page 200 and the author says, he said in his Southern South Carolina accent, and they waited until page 200 to drop that, and you didn't read it, or you skimmed over it, and you've got to go back and re-record either every instance that person talked, or in my case, I had to re-record the first 173 pages of the book, because he was the protagonist.
Oh no, rat bastard.
Every narrator I know has that story, and that's because the prep wasn't thorough, right? So that really bit into that price, the cost of that book.
And then there's tools of the trade, like having everything's done on iPads now. iPad 2, you'll be glad to know, JJ. Everything's that it used to be that you'd get a big manuscript and you'd have pages and highlight them, but everything's on iPads now, no matter where you go. And then there's a cool tool called iAnnotate. That's what I use. Do you use something different, Ronnie?
That's the go-to.
Yeah, and then you can highlight different characters, dialogue and colors, so that your eye just catches it and knows to switch. All sorts of things. You can make notes in the margin of like as you're prepping, so it's all right there, and you can.
Thanks for addressing that. Or just saying that to me. My question was about the preferred computers that everybody's using. For example, I've heard you can get a 16 gig Mac Mini with the M1 chip for only $900. And then you get any old monitor, you can plug that in. And apparently that's better than getting a standalone, what do you call it? AirPads, all that stuff. But I'm wondering what different things are people using?
I use a Mac. I use a Mac Mini in my studio, and I use a MacBook Air, and Macs are great. You plug them in and they work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And whatever you get, make sure it doesn't have a big fan.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, a big noisy fan, and
that's why the M1s are great, because the ones don't have fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And John Grace mentioned the new MacBook Air has no internal fans. So thank you, John Grace.
Yeah, cool.
I got to roll, folks. So
excellent. Well, thank you all.
So do I.
See you, Ronnie.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's wrap up here, guys. If you have other questions about anything, don't hesitate to share, sign up for a voiceover once over with Jeffrey. Thank you all for being here. Ronnie, thank you so much. We're looking forward to sign up for You Should Do audiobooks, hot off the presses. Coming up
My
soon.
pleasure.
Yeah, and if you are doing audiobooks, it might be, working with Ronnie might be a new perspective, or you're halfway there. So
Yay, Angelita, welcome.
yay. Awesome. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much. Ronnie, we'll see you soon. And thanks everybody. Have a
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
day, and we'll see you next month, if not sooner. Okay, thanks.
Bye now. Have a great day, everybody.